G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff Ukraine War update for the 1st of August 2026. I'm your host, the author David Applegate, author of the books The Boyhood Arcade, Power Games, Into the Elves Mound, and the Erotic Tales from the Empire, Part 1 and 2 out now, Part 3 coming soon. All my links are in the link tree. Now, as the war continues, I will continue to bring you comprehensive news from both sides of the war. Now, as we look at the battlefield map, there is a lot of action, and there has been an explosion added here, which says video. And look at this, it might play. Well, that wasn't much, but the unusual part is, and as I've told you before, I'm in Australia, and so often these videos have been blocked. And you're probably wondering, how can you see them? And some little smartass is going to notice something up in the top corner. So, there you go. That's for those who wanted to know. I mean, I'm sure the majority of you figured out how I was getting these videos to you, but there aren't that many, and they're usually all the same. Like a little clip, they show you a little bit of a rumble, a bit of a mushroom cloud rising. They don't really show you much. But what does that look like? Does that look like a house? Or from that distance? That far away? That wide? That's a factory or a warehouse. And it's got big open, and you know it's government because it's got big openness around it, right? Various views of Ukraine today, and then you got the battlefield reports, but yeah. And we have, lots of them actually. We have explosions here, couple in Kiev, couple more in Kharkiv, couple over here. Provider is starting to become Pavlov, is starting to become popular for Russian targeting. It's unusual for Nikod to be attacked. I thought the Ukrainians there decided to sit tight, and I thought the Russians decided they weren't going to cross the river. Same with Kherson. But Odessa was hit multiple times, and so was which one is it? Alexandrovik. They got hit. You can see why I said this is a natural border here for Ukraine, but yeah, this is Moldavia, should have been Romanian/Moldavian, but So the Ukrainians, everything is one-sided. Me, myself, and I. Now, I'm sure a lot of you may have actually seen the articles out why Crimea was given to Ukraine and why it should remain Ukrainian. I'm sure it's a wonderful read of propaganda and prose. But the first half is, and should be, I should say, Khrushchev wanted to reward, was drunk, was having arguments with Ukraine, and decided to give it to Ukraine to get them to shut the fuck up. That is it. They were whining. They were complaining. You treat us poorly, comrade. The workers are starving, comrade. Many of our people live there, comrade. We need the revenue, comrade. Our economy is failing, comrade. And they probably reminded them over and over again that the dear glorious revolution would have failed without the glorious heroes of Ukraine. So, in a decision he later regretted, he gave the Ukrainians what they wanted. Prove you love us, comrade. So Putin is doing to Ukraine what should have been done long ago. A spanking. Now that is not to say they should have gone to war. But we have provocation from Ukraine. From Zelensky himself daring Putin to attack. See, the problem is, and I'm sure a lot of you have noticed this, 90% of people only care what they hear. They do not care what they see. Because judging people by their actions is not politically correct. Most people are indoctrinated puppets, and until they're pulled out of the matrix, they are the enemy. Just like Spain. Spain needs to be spanked. It needs a liberation. It needs all these communists to be across Europe. All the communists, all the refugees, all the aid organisations need to be uprooted and dumped in North Africa. And Morocco can go screw itself. Just because I said some certain things about my disdain for Ukraine and their behaviour, people are making assumptions that this is all Russian propaganda, and that I'm paid to say stupid things, according to the Kremlin of Ukraine. I'm sure that is just another troll account, and there are many others who just want to be told, you're a good little boy. You're mummy's special little boy. You're always right, Billy. Billy, be a good Christian, Billy, and help others every day and be a good boy, Billy. Yeah. And when it comes time for Billy to get anything, no, Billy, your reward's in heaven, Billy. I'm pretty sure, right, that even if they can't understand nuance. Everything to them is absolutism, right? I'm sure the vast majority out there are not fanatics, but you're silent because you don't want to enrage the fanatics. Now, can you understand why? Right? Why Russia gave in to Ukraine in the 1950s, and understand now why Russia does not want to give in. Just like America doesn't want to give in to Iran. Just like, just like how Taiwan doesn't want to give in to China, or South Korea doesn't want to give in to North Korea. Can you understand that now? Please. If you're a troll account, you're not going to change my mind with insults. You're petty. You're petulant. You're a child. You're not listening to anything I say. So why come here if you're not going to listen to what I say? I'm telling you, the right amount of pressure, the right kind of solutions, and there are too many people who don't want solutions. They want quick fixes. They want their little pat on the head. They're growing up with the attitude is of, oh, penicillin, it cures this. I wonder what else we can cure. Quick fixes for everyone. Band-aids all around. A jolly good show, gentlemen, for everyone. Pat yourself on the back and out the medals. And if there were medals for arrogance, Russia and Ukraine would be pinning them on each other every day. And the obvious solution is to freeze the war and call it a day. And you may not like that solution, but it's not the first time in history this solution was presented. This was the solution in the Korean War. It was almost the solution in the Vietnam War, except President Kennedy had a hissy fit and cancelled the elections. So you had the Democrats never accept responsibility for anything. And they haven't changed in centuries. Petulant children who always have to get their way will always be petulant children who always have to get their way. It's an unfortunate condition. If there were solutions to such mental illness, well, I hope someone finds it. Pragmatic people, but the reality is, there are practical people, there are logical people, there are lots of different kinds of emotional people. I happen to be more pragmatic and logical, so my solutions do not appeal to the emotionally damaged who want to get their way all the time. Fanatical sore losers, of which what we have in Russia and Ukraine are a collection of fanatical sore losers on both sides who both cross their arms and say no when they're told they can't get everything they want. Now, as I've said often, the solution to Ukraine is to not put weapons of mass destruction in Ukraine. How hard is that? Well, for the British government, it seems an impossible task. And for Ukraine, it's impossible. Why? Because they're petulant children obsessed with their safety. They're the feminist online screaming about rape culture. And they're the people who want to prejudge you for being white and a colonizer and how we allegedly committed all these atrocities around the world. As if the Mongol Empire didn't exist. As if the Somali, as if the Kenyan, Ghanaian empires didn't exist. See, the problem with these petulant children is they really don't know history, pre-colonialism. They know nothing about they know nothing about Cortez. They know nothing about Columbian history. And in order to appease these native tribes, to appeal to them, they deliberately allow so many people from Africa, the Middle East, and South America, and Eastern Europe to pour over their history selectively and edit out all the nasty bits, except for the atrocities done to them. And a lot of the time, those are alleged atrocities. So to end the Ukraine war, it takes honesty. It takes self-reflection. And it takes a little bit of humility. And eventually, a worn-out Putin and a worn-out Zelensky will grab the map, tear it down at some point, and get a big marking pen. So the old maps are torn up. Get out a new map, get a big marking pen, and go. They'll be struggling, both sides, and eventually when it gets to the bottom of the map, it's done. It's over. And see, it all started because Europe would not hold France responsible for World War One. Had they held France responsible for declaring war on Germany, it would have nothing more would have come of it. The war would have been over. The Germans accept that they secured their western flanks. But see, also the British didn't want the German industry to rise so that it wouldn't threaten them. And so when you understand the past wars, and it's not capitalism to blame, okay, the system, man, that is your cope and seethe. It is the actions of individuals. None of these people ever point out George Soros and the 70 wars he is responsible for, or how Adam Schiff's grandfather, was responsible for the war in the Far East, which led to the war in China, which then led to the war in the Pacific. If it wasn't for the ambitions of Jacob Schiff and using the political weight, and again, the political weight of the Democrat Party has often created wars. When the left, collectively around the world, face the fact that they're responsible for so many revolutions, so many wars themselves, they have no morality to stand on. So, ending the Ukraine war is the unfortunate reality where both sides have to take a black eye. Russia can't get what it wants. Ukraine can't get what it wants. What's wrong with that? If England didn't give France what it wanted in 1918, or if England had stood up to France in 1914 and says, hey, you can't go around declaring war on Germany just because you don't like them, and that was the reality. They made an excuse, the socialist dictatorship of France, and it's still there, the socialist dictatorship. The French should have never been allowed a victory. But if the British hadn't undermined the crown, if the French crown had got a better education, and there are so many things, the what ifs that we can fix today. We can't change the past. That's why the left loves the past, because it can't be changed. Well, it can be, but you know what I mean, right? What is cannot be undone. So they create all these narratives in history and then repeat them over and over again without realizing we can go forward from them. No, they can't. They can't let anything go. They have no forgiveness. Forgive the past, for it is dead and buried. But they call themselves progressives, but they're anything but. And didn't you learn anything from 1984? That is one of the key tenets. And as we go around the battlefield, I'm telling you now, nothing of significance has changed. But the Russians are making it clear the target is Seversk. Now, why are they doing this? To wear out, right? They're trying to get as much as they can before the hardliners step in, and you don't understand. There are factions within every country, and Putin is holding back the hardliners with one hand and trying to appease the isolationists with the other. The whatever uh, worldly pro-European faction you had fostered and pro-American uh, uh, Glasnost and all those things were killed by Bill Clinton. He's an arrogant turd. He should have been spanked. But America won't punish its presidents for their failure. They always want to punish Trump. But they'll never punish Obama for all of his sins. They'll never punish. And the thing is it rightfully so to punish leaders for their sins? Well, you've got to define them. And you've got to. And if you're going to limit Trump's war powers and then pull them back later, which is what they did, right? They did this with Reagan. They did this with Bush, right? And then they turn around and increase them for Obama so he could carry out more drone strikes than Bush, even though they condemned Bush's drone strikes. Does that not tell you all Democrats want is to be the people with the boot on your neck? They don't like everything they hate, they become. Why? Because it reflects their own ugliness back at them. Because they see the consequences of their actions do not lead to good outcomes. George Floyd, drone strikes, the Pakistan deal, the Iranian nuclear deal. None of Obama's deals had good outcomes. Just because Iran was peaceful doesn't mean it was good. They were violating the agreement. Obama knew it, Europe knew it, but everyone was paying, and Europe was paying the Iranian toll, and everybody pretended they weren't. And then everybody pretended that they had peace with Russia, even though, quite quietly, European companies were carving up Russia and racking up debts they could not pay. They tried to turn Russians into mass consumers. That didn't work. They wanted to turn Russia into the bankrupt factory of Europe. Now they want to do that with Ukraine because they realize the Chinese deal was a bad idea. No shit, Sherlock. They're communists. Of course they're going to take your wealth. Now, I understand boomer economics. And it's very hard to explain people. But you got to understand, boomers, right? They went through boom busts, lots of them. So they make as much as you can so to ride out the busts. The problem is they never understood that because they had so many physical calamities in their lifetime. The Great Dust Bowl, multiple hurricanes, right? Wiping out 50 years of economic progress overnight. So you can understand why they're obsessed with ending all these things. But during the years of late boomers and early Gen X, we had such a technological revolution that we created solutions instead of just gathering as much wealth as you can to rebuild after a disaster. We actually made better buildings better, hurricane-proof buildings. We created better irrigation systems. We created a network of water storage to actually go through periods of long, prolonged drought. We don't have many dust bowls anymore. We don't have that many floods anymore. We're getting better at growing food. Boomers never evolved. So when progressives keep telling about progress and evolution, they're lying. Because I judge with my eyes, not my ears, what people do and say. I look for the results of their actions. So that gives me the ability to look at the results of these wars from their actions. And all wars are economic, all wars are political, right? And economic. But this is beyond, shall I say, dick swinging. Hopefully without getting into YouTube algorithms problems. But but the hardliners in Russia need to be appeased. They did not like the Khrushchev deal. They did not like the subsequent deals with Ukraine. Russia really thought Ukraine was their friend, and they betrayed them. Now, there are those in Russia who fear Europe provoking war with Russia because they constantly hear, we're going to break them up, we're going to break them up, we're going to do it again. Once we get in there, we'll carve them up like last time. So Putin has to be hard. He has to say no. And when the people cry, he has to be able to point to something and remind them of how the Europeans treated them. And how the Americans treated them. And how that even if we have a nice friendly president, the next 10 could be our enemy. Because America doesn't have a consistent foreign policy that lasts beyond the term of a president. Prove me wrong. Please. Insults do not prove me wrong. But Putin is not doing this because love Trump, hate Trump. It's because he remembers what it was like to have an Obama, a Bush, and a Biden in office. He remembers Hollande and Merkel talking to his face about trade and plotting war behind his back. Just like the Duke of Wellington to the Tsar. And you know how it ended for the Tsar. So please understand. I'm thinking long term here. That it would have been so much better for everyone had Europe just kept its word and worked with Russia and Ukraine and all the other Eastern European countries in the 90s. The opportunity window is closing because once World War III breaks out, you have lost everything, every opportunity for the stars within our lifetime because that was possible. The more you think about war, the more you think about your pride, the more you think about making glorious stands and saying, I won't have children because there are too many in the world. Well, that's your fault. And you're handing the world to savages who'll set us back 5,000 years. Because this has happened before. History has been tried and prosecuted for thousands of years, where those who embrace war and emotion have torn down civilization after civilization. You have seen how we went from horse and cart to jet aircraft in 80 years. So you understand that for the last 11,600 years, we have been held back not by religion, not by politics, but by greedy individuals who just want their arrogant pride to be satisfied. Genghis Khan, Julius Caesar, that Roman Emperor who broke the back of a Venetian glassmaker because he dared make But he thought the Venetian was mocking him when he made glass that could not break. Glass should break, he said, and had the Venetian killed. Or the steam engine. The inventor of the steam engine killed. The original inventor. And it took, I know a lot of people don't know this, that the steam engine was invented during the Roman Empire. So many things were invented during the Roman Empire and put to death because they not. And remember, when I'm talking about violating the gods, I'm talking about the Romans. So there is a touch of religion there, but it's fear. Ultimately, it comes down to fear. Democrats fear being irrelevant. They hate being in opposition. They fear they're going to lose elections. They fear they're going to lose their power, their prestige. Because they don't understand all power is fleeting. All power is an illusion. Being part of a mob is only an illusion. You are deluding yourself. And this mass delusion, as you can see on the map, has you thinking you want this underdog story, this glorious comeback where Ukraine beats Russia, and because you supported Ukraine, my team won! Yes. Now, if you fought for the Ukraine war, then that is different. But so many people, and I've seen this with the veterans and the how the libtards go around patting themselves on the back for ending the Vietnam War. But ultimately, America should have rounded up every one of those retarded individuals, gave them the option. You go to live in North Korea, or you go live in the Soviet Union. Bernie Sanders should, the moment Bernie Sanders went to the Soviet Union, he's yep, but you think that you can protect freedom by giving your enemies freedom to hurt you time and time again. If you don't fight back, if you don't stand up to the bully, and it's amazing how they want to say Russia's the bully and we're standing up to them, when you don't ask the people of the Donbass what they want. And see, this is all about Europe not wanting Russia to exercise its rights. Because ultimately, Russia is doing what America did in the war against Mexico. But rules are for thee, right? And not for the D heads. So maybe I'm too pragmatic, too practical for most people. But you know what? There are practical and pragmatic people in the world. Poland, for quite some time, has been trying to get their hands on Ukrainian drones. Legally. They have the factories. They could go in and seize the technology if they really wanted to, but no. They are acting like free market capitalists. They want the technology. Ukraine didn't want to part with it, but Ukraine wants the MiG-29s. Why? Because they have the altitude for air-launched missiles. Poland doesn't want to give them up, but Poland can make MiG-29s. I think Ukraine could only make MiG-27s. Or is it Su-27s? I'm not sure. I don't remember which. But I know that Poland and some other countries have stuff that Ukraine wants, and Ukraine has been reluctant to give them access to the drones. Now, they're not selling the technology, they're not selling the drones so per se. It's a deal that will transfer its jets and receive drones and drone technology. A fair market exchange, a free market exchange, which is very practical, very pragmatic. And Ukraine is considering the deal. Now, remember, they had Poland already asked for this months ago. Ukraine did not honour its deal back then. They're now considering honouring their deal because they need the parts for their aircraft very desperately. A lot of people don't know this about jets. A lot of the expense in jets isn't the upfront cost for the jet. The reason why the French jets are so much cheaper than the US jets is you have to manufacture the replacement parts yourself, right? Other than a few bits and pieces in the electronics package, apart from the airframe and a few electronics, you are going through bearings. You're going through turbine fans. These are very expensive over the long term, over the 20-year life cycle of a jet. Although they can be extended in some cases. But yeah. Now, Poland has factories that Ukraine needs access to, and so yes. But why not Bulgaria in the first place? Because they originally, Poland, and the same reason why they originally didn't want to give Ukraine the jets, Poland was of the belief that Russia and Belarus were secretly planning a war to invade them. And then, well, they pretty much clearly know that is not the case. They were just stationing troops there because they believed Poland and the others. So it is my belief that there are people going around the world spreading rumours and lies, trying to create war for profit, whether it be political or psychological or financial, you decide. But I think, especially when it comes to George Soros, it's pathological. Soon, a few more days, the Empire Valve's official art book Volume 1 will launch. I was hoping to get a few more followers, I'm still hoping to get some interest in my project. The official art book brings illustrations of the Empire to life. You have the Empress Sora in the first art book. Yeah, Professor Sora. Please and thank you. Though Russia and Ukraine continue to complain about each other's attacks, Ukraine has hit a Russian refinery several times, each time claiming they destroyed it, of course, while Russia has hit the same a depot at Dmorovsk and a cargo vessel near Odessa. So while both sides complain, both sides carry out attacks, both point fingers at each other, always forgetting whenever you point a finger at someone, there are fingers pointing back at you. Zelensky urges the protection of life while carrying out deadly attacks on Russia. Why a mega influencer's shift to support Ukraine is good for Trump. Why NATO scrambles jets as a Ukrainian missile detonates in Poland. Yes, they are all trying to use influence over others to influence Trump to get what they want. The Middle East wants us to go to war so that we will take in more refugees. Have you not figured out yet? For the last 50 years, there has been nothing but selfish manipulation by external, yes. And yes, India and China. Why would we be sanctioning India? They're our friends, said the Democrats. And Lindsey Graham finally convinced you convinced everyone what I've been saying all along. India was never our friend. They're never going to be our friend. Wake up. Individual Indians can be, absolutely. But India as a whole? No. They're a failed colonial power. They realize the Maharajas sided with Britain and decided to hand India to the British Empire in return for a taste of power. Remember, Queen Victoria was advised by one of those Maharajas for the rest of her life and was using Indian troops to expand India's influence in the British Empire. Victoria thinking it was expanding and enriching the British Empire. In fact, India was looting the British Empire and looting Africa in the spice trade and profiting off the slave trade as a third-party carrier of ships. And while most of India thought they were getting rid of the Indian Muslims, in fact, they were spreading Islam and helped spreading Islam. Remember, India is a failed colonial power. They failed with their invasion of long ago, long before the British. But like most countries, they took their history and threw it in a shredder. They were a declining power. They were well past post-capitalism in their. They had completely collapsed as a society. Reading and writing was a myth. Yes, reading and writing, the ability to read books, was a myth in India. Yes, they had thousands of texts, but they couldn't read them. Not even their high priests could read their own Hindi. Couldn't read Hindi. They had no education system. Why? Because the strong killed the intellectual, because the intellectual would dare speak against the strong's lies. And that is always the crime of history. In every nation, the strong killing the weak because the weak still have a sense of justice and morality. So they continue to make deep strike ranges against Russian facilities while complaining about Russia making the same attacks on them. Once again, you have the hypocrisy of the liberal establishment. When you swallow the lie and think that your side is incapable of evil and therefore every action is justified, you're on the path to damnation. Because then anything can happen. It may not be you, it may not be the next guy, but eventually morality is gone, as you've seen around the world as morality declines. Russian forces have hit over 80 vessels in the last month, according to the latest war reports. That includes attacks on shipping today. Now, it's unusual, but Russia logs every attack, the location of every attack, the number of the international identification number of every ship they attack. They don't always tell you, but remember, they know every ship who really owns those ships. So when a ship claims to be, I'm just an Algerian freighter, I'm innocent, where in fact it could be a Ukrainian gunboat. You don't know. Now, of course, the ICC is corrupt, the International Corruption Commission. They're not carrying out any. They have let so many people off and yet persecuted others for less crimes than they've committed themselves. Now, the Geran 4 Seeker drone is the most commonly produced Russian drone today. The Lancet and others, they're outdated. They're too slow. They're slowly being phased out. The Russians are slowly using up their stockpiles of older missiles as well to take out. Most of the Lancets today are reconfigured for interceptors against other drones, and they're using older missiles as interceptors because they're cheaper and faster to make against drones. But the cheapness of the drone is the problem with this war, and it enables it to carry on over and over and over again as the death toll on both sides continues to escalate. But Zelensky's made a mistake in his speeches, and Russia's pointed that out. That is common. I would have done the same thing. If I heard the speech, I'd be pointing it out. That Zelensky for years has been saying 50,000 and around 400,000 wounded. That's just the first year, and he's repeated the same talking point every year. But this time he told one station it was 55, then 46 in another, and that Russian losses were 14 times higher. But in reality, there are 290,000 desertion cases, and we know what they've done. Do you need to be told? Yes. People who have surrendered to Russia have been declared deserters. Yes, that is what's happening in Ukraine. Now, I don't think that all of them have surrendered to, in many cases. I think there's also those who have gone to other countries on training missions, and sorry, my mouse. I'm trying to get to the next story. Now, Zelensky's been trying to persuade Trump to call in a major favour and get Elon Musk to extend the coverage of access to Starlink, and Elon refuses to meet with the Ukrainian leader, according to Zelensky. The last time they met, Zelensky was petulant and rude. I think Elon did give an interview, although he could have been talking about someone else, but he said when he met with them, the delegation, may not have been Zelensky, okay, but I think he said delegation, and this was, I think, was this New York Times live? There's live interviews they do all the time going on. I just can't think of their name at the moment, but you've seen them, where Elon sat there and told everyone to go, told Bob Iger to go fuck himself. Yeah. He was right. Bob Iger's out. He was right about Bob Iger. And he said it was right about the Ukraine. He said that they, meaning the delegation, were rude. They don't like being told no. Yes. And ultimately, it's not our war. Well, unfortunately, people have made it our war. So there is that. But the whole point of the memorandum that people keep bringing up was Ukraine was supposed to be neutral, stay neutral, not, and yeah, not, and it would not end, it would not honour the Minsk Accords, and of course, like good European liberals, every time Ukraine did something wrong, the liberals would play the game of hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, because it is the Marxists' way. Marxists are sycophants. They will tell all these people who talk about protecting the democracy of Ukraine. They're all socialists. They all want to turn America into a communist country because communism is just free healthcare. You're just afraid of brown people because they give women because they're better because they give women a better life. You know, all the people who fall for all the ugly slogans. Well, my friend said it. It must be true, right? Well, they're not your friend and they're lying to you. Do you not understand sexual predatory behavior at all? Women are their own worst enemy. Jane Fonda promoted feminism to get every other woman to be unlikable so that she would have the pick of all the rich men. Do you not get it yet? People are selfish. Anne Ryan tried to teach you to leverage that selfishness to get practical solutions, a neutral outcome for all, mutually beneficial outcomes. Strive and rich, and along the way, you get your just rewards. Instead, we have missiles flying at military hubs and plants in Kiev as Ukraine continues to militarize and threatening to broaden the war with strikes on Russian shipping around the world. Now, again, it is going to take, the longer this war goes, it's like everything. The longer you let a problem grow, the longer it takes to get to the solution. So all these people who want quick fixes and instant ends, I'm sorry. It's going to be a slow wind down now. We are watching the wind down of the Ukraine war. If you've noticed, this is the slowest week of the slowest, and it's only going to get slower. Russians are trying to get the Ukraine to accept an end to the war. By making it, unfortunately, too expensive to carry out their war. And Ukraine is trying to make Russia give up by making it too expensive by trying to threaten their entire economy. What would you always have to ask yourself, what would you do if someone did it to you? Where is your red line? How far will you go? Would you incinerate? I don't necessarily mean with nuclear weapons, but would you incinerate an entire city? If Ukraine starts that level of escalation and threatening the lives and to isolate Crimea so they can retake it, what would you do if it was your island being starved and cut off from water? What would you want to see happen to the people who cut you off from food and water? Now, in my head, you might really understand practical solutions to bring about the end of the Ukraine war involve putting political pressure on the people who want this war to continue to no longer want this war to continue. And that is it. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Like, share, and subscribe and all that fun stuff, because I really appreciate those who have subscribed. Because if you may have heard, YouTube ad revenue is down. Way down. Because the click rate on ads is way down. So the amount of advertising money available is way down. And as companies compete for more, right, for the few remaining customers and trying to hold on to customers, their advertising budgets are the first to be slashed. That which means I need financial support from my customers. Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. All my links are in the link tree, description below, in my profile, or scan the QR code on the screen. Appreciate each and every one of you. See you in the next video, and bye for now.